Hello everyone. So as promised, if you watched yesterday's sharing, I promised that I would come back today and bring you some dates of some things that I talked about yesterday. So if you're just hopping on and you didn't see yesterday's sharing, I was talking about how Pluto will be going direct in October, and Mars is ingressing Libra. And what's going to happen with Mars moving through Libra is it's going to continue to move through Libra, and it's going to be approaching what's called the last quarter square to Pluto in Capricorn. And when I was talking about that, I was recognizing, wow, I really want to see, is Pluto going to be direct when that exact square happens, or is Pluto retrograde? And that's a really important piece because it's a different energy when planets are direct, right? So I found out that Pluto will, in fact, be direct. Ooh. I'll have to tell you. So I actually discovered some other things as I was looking at this Mars square Pluto. So I want to bring this information to you because I found something really fascinating. So I'm going to give you some dates to be looking out for. And I'm going to explain all of this in this sharing so that you can really understand, the technical information that I'm going to share, but as well as like what it really means, the energy of it, right? So Pluto goes direct on October 6th. And this is an energy we'll feel. Pluto is an outer planet, so it really, we feel the energy shift. We feel the consciousness shift when it goes direct. When, it's been retrograde in Capricorn, this is really having our consciousness assess our Capricorn consciousness. Pluto would help us to actually really look at what's been underneath the way in which we structure our consciousness. Now, as I said, Pluto goes direct October 6th. It's going to be at 24 degrees Capricorn. You can see that. Look for it in your chart if you follow the transits in your chart. And also what's interesting is Saturn will go direct on October 11th. This is going to be at 6 degrees, almost 7 degrees of Aquarius. That's pretty close. It's within a week of each other, right? So this is a big energetic shift. Also, though, Jupiter goes direct on October 18th. At 22 degrees Aquarius. So you can look at in your own chart what houses that those shifts are happening in, and you can see what aspect of life you'll notice forward movement. Because whenever planets are retrograde, we're really turning consciousness inward to really reflect, review. And so when the planets actually go direct, we'll start to see forward movement. It'll take some days because these are more outer planets. The personal planets like the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, those actually move. The personal planets move really quickly. We don't notice. We're so used to that movement that it can be that we don't notice it as much as when the outer planets go direct. So there'll be big energy shifts. But what I found that was interesting, that I thought would be of interest to bring to today's live, is that we're going to be coming into a Mercury retrograde, and that's on September 27th. That's going to be in Libra, and it retrogrades at 25 degrees. If you've been watching my lives, I did talk about that. I thought it was really interesting because Mercury will retrograde where Venus was in our new moon in Virgo. So this is really, by design. It's really interesting that it is retrograding right at the point that Venus was in this new moon chart. So this really speaks to me in a way where we're really going to be assessing how we're relating, relating with ourselves, how we're relating with others, our thoughts, perceptions, communications in regards to that. And by the way, Venus was squaring Pluto in that chart of the new moon chart. So this means that when Mercury goes retrograde, it's going to be in square to Pluto. So that's very interesting as well. Again, this is about our perceptions around relating, and it's also our perceptions around where we need to have boundaries, where we are committed, where our commitments actually lie, and it can be having us really assess and consider how we want to implement certain commitments, boundaries, how we want to structure our reality, how we want to structure our lives. And so you'll notice that this Mercury retrograde will help to really bring consciousness inward and assess that. Now, what I found also interesting is that Mercury goes direct at 10 degrees of Libra on October 18th. So this is the same day that Jupiter goes direct. This is really important because both of those planets are actually rulers of the nodes right now. So if you don't already know, the north node of the moon right now is in Gemini. Mercury is the guide or ruler of Gemini. And Jupiter rules or guides the south node of the moon, which is Sagittarius. So the fact that these two planets are going direct on the same day is very, very poignant. This is very interesting. We're coming into really experiencing the last handful of degrees of our collective consciousness expanding through this nodal axis of Gemini and Sag. If you've been following me, I've mentioned that on November 19th, we'll have our first full moon partial eclipse in Taurus. And this is really the weaving in of a new set of eclipses that will be in Taurus and Scorpio for the next, starting in January, it'll be 18 months. We'll start really funneling our collective consciousness and our expansion of consciousness through that Scorpio and Taurus lens. So we'll all individually and collectively really be looking at and focusing our consciousness towards Plutonian themes, Scorpio themes, which is really, death and regeneration. This is about empowerment. This is about, it'll bring up any shadow sides around empowerment. So where there's been abuses of power, manipulations in regards to resources and things like that. It'll bring up potential fears of the collective, fears of individuals as well, whatever fears that we need to shed in order to really access our own empowerment. The north node of the moon will then, move to Taurus, which is a Venus-ruled sign. This is going to be really about what are our values, really looking at, how are our values being upgraded? What do we need? What are our desires and our need, for the body? So really taking care of our body and our values, meaning that our body is our greatest resource. We know we have to take care of the body. What do we need to take care of our bodies so that we can not only survive, but thrive on the earth plane? Taurus is an earth sign, right? So this is where, we've been in this 18-month cycle of the nodes being in Gemini, Sagittarius. This has really been looking at truth versus lies, really trying to get down to what is true, what is not. This can be, of course, collectively, but also individually. You know, we all have our own personal truth and our own belief systems that support our own evolutionary path. And so this has really been assessing what is true for us individually, what is no longer true for us individually, and how do I want to learn in new ways? How do I want to expand my consciousness in new ways? How do I want to research new things so that I can learn new things and expand my consciousness? And really, it can be really looking at, you know, we can be looking at opposite sides, or what seems to be opposite ends of the spectrum as far as information, but also where do those opposite ends actually support? So something that seems opposite to each other, how do they support a more holistic understanding? So this is what we've been doing for the last 18 months or so, a little less than 18 months, but we're getting close to 18 months, right? So the fact that the rulers are going direct on the same day is really interesting. So this is, you know, this Mercury retrograde I think is really going to be important. And I really want to talk about that so that I can share with you what I feel to be the potential value in this transit. Because with Mercury retrograde in Libra, this is really going to be about, you know, our own perceptions about our personal reality. What we actually need first, our own personal values, our own personal needs, and how we actually bring that to any kind of relating, any kind of relationship. And, you know, where is it in our relationships? You know, are we feeling empowered? Meaning, are we feeling valued? Are we first and foremost valuing ourselves, valuing our own personal perceptions, and really recognizing that our personal perceptions are our connection to the divine, and that in our devotion to whatever we see as divine and the way that we choose to live our lives personally, you know, how is that when we then bring that to our relationships? Is our own values and self-value, are we being valued by the people that we're relating to, you know, relating with? And are we also valuing the people, you know, that are in our lives? So their perceptions, their communications, and is this mutually beneficial? Libra is all about mutual benefit. You know, are we balanced in how we're relating to each other? Are we actually mutually benefiting from the connection? That's the hope of Libra, is to learn how to relate in a way that we actually expand each other's consciousness through relating. And so we're valuing each other, we're valuing each other's perceptions, and getting a more holistic understanding and an evolutionary path through relationship itself. So with Mercury going retrograde in Libra, this is very interesting in regards to the fact that it is the ruler of the North Node right now. So this is really, you know, assessing what is our place in communicating our own personal ideas, our perceptions, and also are we really being respected, honored? Are our relationships with respect and honoring, even when we're different, right? Now, as I said, Mercury, when it goes retrograde, it's going to be at a very poignant point because it's going to be squaring Pluto. So this is really going to be about assessing this. Like, am I able to communicate my ideas with those that I encounter, with my relationships, with my friendships? And is there a mutual empowerment there? Right? Is there places that there needs to be certain boundaries so that relationships work, or relating works, that it is respectful, it is harmonious? Libra really wants harmony, but it does, part of the Libra consciousness is traversing, you know, experiencing imbalances in order to really fully understand what it is to be in a mutual mutually beneficial relating style and relationships, right? So it's where it's mutually beneficial. And you know, being the fact that Jupiter, the ruler of the south node at the moment, will also go direct, will go direct on the same day that Mercury goes direct. So, as I said, Mercury will it'll be squaring Pluto. It's gonna retrograde back to 10 degrees, and Jupiter's been retrograde for a while. Jupiter will go direct on the same day that Mercury goes direct. So, the rulers or guides to both of the nodes of the moon right now are going direct at the same time. Now Jupiter's in Aquarius. So Aquarius has really been, you know, looking at and expanding a certain level of like, what are our ideas? What are our commitments in our ideas? And I say commitments because Saturn's been in Aquarius as well. So we're looking at Saturn, wherever Saturn is also like, what quality of consciousness are we committing to? How are we structuring our consciousness? And when we put Saturn in Aquarius, this is very much about, you know, what groups are we connected to? What lines of thinking are we connected to? What ideas are we committed to? And so the fact that Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all go direct within, you know, between October 6th and October 18th is really interesting. We've been really looking at, you know, our structures of consciousness and new ideas in regards to that, new parameters in which we want to explore consciousness and also learn, because Jupiter's about learning. And as I said, it's about our belief systems that support us personally in our own learning path. And when you put that in that Aquarian consciousness, it can mean groups. So, given that Mercury and Jupiter going direct on the same day, this is going to be really about, okay, we've had some revisiting of and reviewing, rewiring. Mercury retrograde is a great time to literally rewire the synapses in our brain. Find ways to think a better feeling thought, for example. Find ways to perceive things in new ways that are supportive of us and supportive, you know, not only of ourselves individually, but supportive of others as well. And communicating that sense of support. Meaning, even if we don't agree with someone, we can still respect their point of view and respect that they are bringing a unique perception that contributes to society and to consciousness a more holistic point of view. Really, you know, having different ways of looking at things can actually help us and become enlightened. We need different perspectives in order to have a more enlightened point of view. And so this is really what can have been coming up with this nodal axis in Gemini and Sagittarius, and really looking at our resistances to our own, you know, truth as opposed to other people's truth, and our perceptions, our communications, and how there can be opposing points of view. There can be different ways of looking at things, but how open are we to actually recognizing that we all bring a contribution to a more enlightened perspective? And so being that Mercury's doing its retrograde in Libra, which is an air sign, which is a sign about relating, you know, Jupiter has been doing its retrograde in Aquarius. It's an air sign. It's also about relating. It's also about the humanitarian. It's about really honoring the fact that we all bring a unique light, and that light that we bring is diverse. We're not all going to be the same, nor would we want that. We're not all going to think the same, nor would we want that. It would very much limit the potential creativity that can happen in the world, as well as the potential for light, because we all bring something very unique creatively and in our own way that we shine light in the world, and we fuel consciousness in the growth of consciousness in the world. So given this Mercury retrograde and Jupiter retrograde and the fact that they're going direct on the same day is really important, because this really can be us becoming more aware and more understanding of how we're relating with others, how we're relating to ourselves, and are we valuing ourselves, our own points of view, our own perceptions, and then are we also being valued by those that we find ourselves with in the world, in our lives? Like, are we being honored? Are we being valued? Meaning that we're being respected, and that our personal values and perceptions and communications are being given a space to exist as well, right? So I got so excited about this information that I actually didn't even look. Okay, when does when does Mars square Pluto? So I'm gonna look for you. So Mars gets to that last quarter square on October 22nd. October 22nd. So both Mars and Pluto will be direct. And as I said, Mars will be in a last quarter square to Pluto. So this is a crisis in consciousness. And, if you don't know what that means, you can go back to my sharing yesterday. But this is really about, there's a certain level of tension and pressure we can be feeling around the past and the future. Where we've been and where we're going, and how we've created the structure of our reality in the past, and how we want to create the structure of our reality in the future. So this is really going to be a big month. October is going to be a big month, and we've been, experiencing a lot of planets retrograde for a while. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things develop with these planets going direct, and then also, that Mars square Pluto. Eventually Mars will continue on and it will conjunct Pluto again. So when that happens, it'll be a seed point on how we want to actually structure our reality individually and collectively for the next Mars-Pluto cycle. So I don't want to overwhelm with information, so I won't go any further. I hope this is helpful for you. You can utilize these dates and really look at, really notice what's happening in your world around the dates of these transits that I shared with you in this sharing. Okay, you can utilize a journal. You can actually write down the dates, and then write down what's happening for you, what's showing up for you, because this can really help you to utilize these transits in a way that are implementing, creating the structure of consciousness, the structure of your own reality that you would like to set up for your own life. And yeah, that's really exciting. Now, if you live in the United States, we're coming up to the United States Pluto return. So where Pluto is in the sky is going to return to where it was when this country was born. This is a huge transit. It's going to happen in February. So, it's interesting. Even if you don't live in the United States, we know that the United States does have an effect on all of the other countries. and, you know, we're all connected. So it'll be interesting to see the lead up between now and February. And if I didn't mention yet, the nodes of the moon will go into Taurus and Scorpio in January. So October seems to be a pretty big month. And then we have an eclipse in November. We have a new moon eclipse in Gemini on December 4th. We have our last quarter square from Saturn to Uranus. Saturn's in Aquarius, squaring Uranus and Taurus in December. I believe it's December 2nd. I'll have to be sure I'm remembering that date correctly. I actually look at so many dates of transits that, you know, I'm pretty sure that's correct, but I'll correct myself if I'm not correct. But that's in December, and then the nodes shift in January, and then this country in February has its Pluto return. So I think we're going into some deep territory, and I hope this information is helpful so that we can all be navigating this territory in our highest and best for us individually and collectively. And I want to read the comments here. Does retrograde sometimes feel like a stirring of the pot as part of what helps us get in touch with where we are, where we are committed, and weed out what's not working? So it can sometimes not feel good in the process. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because retrogrades actually expose information that we missed, that we didn't see before, that wasn't apparent before. So it will stir the pot. It will bring up stuff that needs to be seen. And, you know, it helps us to weed out what's not working. So we'll find that more information. Mercury retrogrades are always what it does is it's our cue that we actually pull consciousness inward, and we really actually pull our consciousness into our right brain thinking. So our intuitive perception, the intuitive part of our brains. So it goes from, you know, logical thinking, which is very like, you know, forward movement, and it's kind of step by step. And then we go into our right brain thinking when Mercury goes retrograde. So we go into this part, the function of our brain that's very feminine, that is actually very intuitive. And it can just know things without really understanding how we put that together. But it's because when Mercury's direct, we're actually pulling in a lot of different information, and we're not always consciously aware of all that information, right? Because we pull in a lot of information. When Mercury goes retrograde, it's like consciousness pulls inward, and it actually distills the truth of what's going on. So by the time that Mercury is pulling inward, we can have things that initiate that intuitive part of our brain. And we can also just have things come to our awareness that we weren't conscious of before. And so, yeah, it's like, let's revisit this, let's clean it up, you know, because there's more to consider. There's more to organize so that we have all the information we need to move forward again. So it's really kind of a grace in a way, because it gives us the opportunity to take a minute and really be sure we're getting what's going on. And that way we're not just going direct all the time and, you know, skipping over information that would be detrimental in the future, right? So this gives us an opportunity to kind of go inward and really actually, as I said, you know, take a minute, really allow the right brain function to set in, allow intuition to come through. And so it does help us weed out what's not working. This is why a lot of changes can happen in the retrograde, where when the planet goes direct again, and in this case Mercury that we're talking about, right? When it goes direct again, you know, changes will have happened. Changes, things will have changed, right? So it can sometimes not feel good. Yeah, it can sometimes not feel good because we thought things were going a certain way and it just wasn't the big picture, right? We didn't have all the information yet. So that can feel not great, because if we've had this vision in our mind of how things are going and then we get information that doesn't align with that, then it can really not feel great, right? So, but it's always to our benefit, because we want to be sure that when we are moving forward with our perceptions, our communications, our, you know, like contracts, you know, or commitments or things like that, we've got all the information, and you know, we're doing it from an educated perspective. What day are the rulers going direct again? So that's on October 18th. So that's Mercury and Jupiter going direct October 18th. That's going to be a really interesting day. I suggest noting that, because it is the guides or rulers to the nodes right now. So this is, you know, watch what information comes in. Watch how things change on that day. I would say even a few days, you know, like 5 days before, 5 days after. This is going to be potent time, and really looking at our perceptions, our communications, how that influences our belief systems, our the way, you know, what we believe to be true. I won't be surprised if collectively there's some really unexpected information that comes out. And I'll say, yeah, for the collective, but also for the individual, right? So, yeah. Hi, Michael. It's nice to see you. So, yeah, thanks so much for all of your comments. It's always so fun to see the comments, and definitely, you know, answer questions as I can, because always makes it richer, and I love that. And yeah, you know, I think I'll start really studying when the next Mars-Pluto cycle starts. That's going to be an interesting one, because Mars and Pluto are, they both rule Scorpio, and as I said, the nodes of the moon will transfer to Taurus and Scorpio in January. The sun will go into Scorpio here soon. We'll have a full moon eclipse in Taurus. So it'll be interesting to see when that Mars-Pluto seed point happens. A conjunction is always a seed point for the cycle. So that's going to be an important one to track, because it's the ruler of the south node. Not in the moment, but it will be later, right? Because the nodes will move into Taurus, Scorpio in January. So I'll be studying that. I'll bring that information for you in another sharing here pretty soon. Thanks so much for hopping on, and thanks for anyone watching the replay. If there's any information you'd like me to elaborate on, or that I could answer some questions, you're certainly welcome to leave questions in the comments, or any insights, thoughts that you have. I would love to hear. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about this information, because I know it's actually been a lot tonight. And so always feel free to ask, and either I'll address it in the comments or I'll just bring it to the next sharing. So thanks for hopping on. I hope you're all having a lovely evening or afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you tomorrow.